Good morning, and a very warm welcome to our panel discussion, Growing Your Business Beyond the Pandemic. My name is Janina Aubrey Jimenez, and I'm the Head of Business Services at University of Hertfordshire, and I am delighted to be hosting this event today. This is the first of 3 sessions that are taking place today as part of the university's SME Support Day. We created the day to let SMEs know about the many ways in which the university and other key stakeholders in the county and beyond can help their businesses achieve their full potential. Our second event, the Funded Internships Virtual Fair, will take place between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. this afternoon. And all the SMEs that have accessed our graduate employment funding scheme in association with Santander will have the opportunity to meet our talented finalists and graduates to discuss internship opportunities that have been enabled by the awarded funding. And at 3 p.m., we are hosting the University Business Support Showcase, where we will be sharing the solutions and strategies that we have put in place for SMEs through our blend of excellent education, enterprise, and research. And it's not too late to register if you haven't yet done so. We'll be adding a link on the chat box now. And we're also recording the final session, so feel free to sign up to receive a recording if you're unable to attend today at 3. And during the next hour, our esteemed panel, which is on screen now, will be discussing the different ways SMEs can navigate through the challenges they face as a result of Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic. There is no denying that the temporary closures, a shift to online shopping, reduced travel, and a wholesale change in the way we trade with Europe have had an enormous impact on businesses across the UK. Smaller firms have been disproportionately affected. And a recent survey from the Office for National Statistics found that 17.2% of micro businesses, those are businesses with 10 employees or less, had paused trade or had temporarily closed as of late last year. And this is compared with 6.1% of firms with 250 or more employees. I am sure you'll have plenty of questions for our panels. So for the final 30 minutes, we will invite you to submit them through the Q&A box. And please feel free to add your questions throughout the session so that we can address them at the end. But before we dive into our discussion, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to introduce our prestigious panel to you. I'll start with the person I can see on my left, Sian Ryan. She's head of service at Hertfordshire Growth Hub. She has an impressive track record of working with SMEs, running multi-million-pound contracts, and more than a decade of experience leading business support services. Sian has created and overseen many successful services, including Inspire to Enterprise, the first national operation for support enterprises, and Northamptonshire Growth Hub, one of the first growth hubs in the UK. Briege Leahy. She was appointed Chief Executive of Herts Chamber of Commerce in March 2019. And in her 2 years at the Chamber, Briege has spearheaded the highly successful Entrepreneur Foundation and the Let's Keep the Heart in Hertfordshire campaign. She's committed to increasing opportunities for the Herts Chamber and meeting its members' needs. Afolami MP, the Conservative MP for Hitchin and Harpenden. He got into politics to give back to his country and make a positive difference to people as their Member of Parliament. He's passionate about getting the big decisions right for the next generation, helping businesses thrive, protecting our green belt, and caring for the most vulnerable. Dr. Nadim is Executive Chairman and founder of multi-award-winning digital agency Clock. From the company's early days as a Princess Trust startup, he now runs one of the top 100 digital marketing agencies in the UK. Sid appears regularly as a motivational speaker in schools, universities, and at industry events to share his inspirational story. In 2012, he was awarded an honorary doctorate by the University of Hertfordshire in recognition of his work in the development of business and entrepreneurial education. Caroline Syson. She's the founder of Pocket PA and a serial entrepreneur with a 30-year background in setting up and running her own businesses. Caroline created Pocket PA when her daughter Megan started working for herself at the age of 19 and couldn't find an all-in-one software to support the day-to-day running of her business. Pocket PA is a cloud-based app that manages and streamlines all of the admin tasks that are required to run a business. Paul Wickham, he is the head of enterprise and innovation at Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. He leads on the lab's work to accelerate small business growth, inward investment, and economic development across the county. Paul is a highly experienced economic development practitioner who has spent over 30 years working at national, regional, and local level, delivering business support programs and initiatives. Malcolm MacKenzie, he is director of Hello Flexibles, graduated with a business degree from Sheffield before embarking on a 26-year career in the food industry, predominantly in production, sales and marketing, supplying food service and retail. 2013 saw a change of direction into plastic packaging, and as director of a supplier to the produce and bakery sectors, this led him to starting his own business in 2017. Hello Flexibles has changed the dynamic of supplying standard plastic to a solution of reducing plastic, making it more appropriate for the recycling infrastructure and looking for an answer to the plastic debate. And last but not least, Simon Poulter is relationship manager at Santander Universities, looking after universities in the Midlands, Greater London and Thames Valley areas. Through the university's program, Santander is committed to supporting university students, graduates, and entrepreneurs, as well as local SMEs through locally managed initiatives and awards. We really are very fortunate to have such a fantastic panel with us today, and I'm sure you're very keen to hear from them now. So let's jump right into the discussion. And I'd first like to hand over to Sid, Caroline, and Malcolm to give their views as SME business owners. So Sid, Caroline, Malcolm, please choose in which order you like to go. And what would you like to say, what would you say have been the key challenges that you have faced during the last year, and what strategies have you put in place to navigate through them?
Well, I think I'm actually really lucky. I've got Brexit challenges, COVID-19 challenges. I work in plastic that brings its own challenges, and we've got spiraling raw materials, which I've pretty much got the set really. But in terms of Brexit and COVID-19, well, Brexit, we had knowns. After a fashion, we knew when it was going to be. We had an idea what the impact was going to be. With COVID-19, it was very different. There was a lot of unknowns. And, you know, we didn't know when there was going to be a lockdown. We didn't know about the regional tiers. So there was massive impacts that were uncertainties. So how did we navigate the knowns and unknowns? And it was a case of review, and adapt. And really the outputs needed to be relevant and appropriate to what we were trying to achieve. So I reviewed our business plan, I reviewed our sales forecast, reviewed our cash flow predictions, and needed to determine whether it was appropriate for the challenges that are ahead. I took it all, I really stripped it right back to day one, and looked at my business plan and really, why did I go into business? What was I trying to achieve? And do I have a business that's appropriate under the current climate? So I was looking at our product portfolio. Was I in the right market sectors? And the reality and the answer to that was no, I wasn't. I didn't have the right products, and I wasn't working in the right markets. So I've now got a business that's, as you've just quite explained, I offer sustainable solutions, reducing plastic, making more appropriate for the UK recycling infrastructure, and trying to find what's next. And that's helped me focus on the challenges that Brexit of COVID have brought to light. And if I give two small examples of how I dealt with Brexit and COVID, the first being we manufacture products in Spain, and products were brought across in bulk and stored in the UK, and our markets were the UK and Holland. But the customs blockades were an absolute nightmare and devastating to the business. So I had to review that position, and my adaptation was, well, let's move everything out of the UK and put it into Holland. So we have the distribution to Holland, and we trickle it across into the UK, so we can service our Dutch market and we can service our UK customers. Things still get held up, but one thing gets held up, not the whole business being devastated by what was happening. COVID, well, I embraced the new world. The world had moved. The ways of working had changed. I actually closed my office, so people weren't coming to the office. So in reviewing my costs, there was no point in having that overhead. So I closed it, and I came to university, and I've got an office at the university now, and that's brought me closer to the university. Now I've had connections to the uni since the inception of my business. I've been part of the incubation right from the very start, and it's a great group of people on the same journey, facing similar challenges, but actually on different parts of that journey. So it's a good support network. I've got access to a huge amount of academia, and also links to other support networks. So right at the beginning, I had Exemplus. They supported my development of my strategy. I've recently been awarded some support from Innovate UK to market the sustainable solutions that I've got. And I'm not trying to sell the university. It might sound like I am, but I'm not trying to sell it. But my point is that there is support there for SMEs, the university being one of them that will link you into other areas. Obviously, there's webinars with HMRC and everything else that can help you through that journey. And my point is that there's plenty of people on this panel that are far more intelligent and experienced than I am, but they can offer that advice. And as a business owner, you can choose to take the advice or not, but it's always good to listen. So that's kind of a little bit of my journey.
Thank you. That's fascinating. Sid, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Janina.
Great points there, and we can discuss a bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Malcolm said, review and adapt, and that's what it's all about. And I don't think you need a pandemic for that. I think that should be, it's all the while in business. So there are actually 4 businesses that I'm involved with, and I won't get into details of each, but they'll pick out some of the lessons. So one of the businesses is called Swipe Station, and we do click and collect for beer in stadiums and busy venues. So of course, everything gets shut down. We've had 0 revenue since in 12 months. And I said to the team, I said, look, how are we going to come through this as winners? Because it could break us or it could make us. And so we started figuring out what angles we could take. We have an app and a Swipe Station unit which prints out a voucher you can take to the fast lane and get served really quickly. One of the things we realized, though, as we were looking at the pandemic situation, is that mobiles and mobile payment was happening and becoming very adopted and very accepted. During the release of lockdowns, everyone started ordering through their mobiles. So we thought, okay, this could actually make a huge difference, a positive difference to our business. So we started pitching going Swipe Station only to some of our clients. And one of the 10th biggest stadiums in the country agreed to go Swipe Station only when the fans come back, which is fantastic news. We were then able to go do a Seeders fundraise on the back of that, and raise £635,000 to go and scale the business once we come out of it. So it was very much review and adapt, figure out what the opportunities are, and try and make the most of it. Malcolm's reference to office space is another one. So we have a beautiful old schoolhouse in Kings Langley. We've been here for nearly 20 years, and it's a beautiful old building. But again, no one was coming in, so we figured we took a slightly different approach. I've always liked the idea of collaboration, and I think in creative and tech industries, there's a lot of collaboration anyway and naturally. So we decided to open it as a co-working space. So we had some 6 months of half price rent, but we then spent some money investing in sort of COVID safe, making the office COVID safe, and then promoting ourselves as a co-working space, so that when people do want to come back, it looks like a lot of people are going to be wanting to work from home, but probably not every day. And we said, look, if you want to work from home a lot, but 1 or 2 days a week, you want to come into an office where there's like-minded individuals, you could probably come and spend some time at the old schoolhouse. And so we launched DigiCluster Prime, which is our subscription business, and enables people to take a desk 1, 2 to 5 days a week, or office space as well, because we realized that we're only going to be in the office 1 or 2 days a week. On the back of that, if it works well, our office will actually be making us money. And that would be an amazing thing. That'll be a first, wouldn't it? And I suppose the other thing, looking at, getting involved with the community, as Malcolm said also, we looked at our community and said, how can we help? And that's been a real, we've got a WhatsApp group with my supper club group. And on a daily basis, we were sharing ideas, tips, and help and support with each other. And I think, when times get tough, that's when you find out, who your friends are and how you can help each other. And that was and I think doing some volunteering as well. I was volunteering at the at Watford General Hospital, serving frontline staff teas and coffees. And I think when times are tough, it's good to actually just volunteer and help other people, because it reminds us how difficult other people are having it at the time. And one final thing, there are a number of schemes that have come out, and the Kickstarter scheme, I think, is, if you haven't done it already, I think it's still possible to get involved up until December, I'm told. We took on 5 Kickstarters. They're paid for by the government for 25 hours a week at minimum wage, but our team of 5 have absolutely blown us away. We were going to do 3, and we thought, well, let's do more. In fact, just taking on 1 Kickstarter can be more work, was just as much work. In fact, it's more work than taking on 3, because you then feel the need to look after them a lot. But we know there's a lot of the students are graduates and have come through some great universities, some University of Hertfordshire, of course. But if you get them to work as a team and you give them some leadership and guidance, they then have been able to work remotely and look after each other and mentor and coach each other through some challenging times. So if you haven't done it yet, get involved, because it's a real source of inspiration and great addition to your workforce.
Thanks very much, Sid. Some commonalities with what Malcolm presented, and some really great tips and examples. Caroline.
Yeah, so I'm slightly different to Malcolm insofar as I've got an online business, and we're still quite early. We're pre-revenue, and I've been developing it now this is our 5th year. So it's been, we really had launched in January, February last year as our rebranded version, and unfortunately 6 weeks later, COVID struck. So we kind of went into a tailspin. Our target demographic is the solo self-employed business owner earning under 85,000 non-VAT registered. And with COVID, all of their businesses just closed overnight. So it was quite a massive setback with regards to what we were planning with our marketing and the sort of relaunch of Pocket PA into sort of the UK, really. So we had to retreat back and realise that our target demographic were really just in survival mode. And so as a result, we had to regroup as a business. Fortunately, I'm a very lean operating model. I tend to work mainly on outsourcing and contractors at this point until we had some revenue coming in. So I didn't have to abandon an office or worry about sort of high overheads. I literally just had my development team. But it did mean that we had to stop and wait, not rehire anybody. We had to keep cash flow really tight. And I went back into a development mode and looking at what we could do to sort of increase brand awareness, potentially of Pocket PA at this time, when people might not actually be physically using it for their business, but they could still find out a bit more about it. So we hosted a one-day free live stream event on Facebook and YouTube. There were quite a lot of people that were furloughed, and I managed to enlist the help of 6 Pocket PA angels to help host the day. They got a lot of work experience in the planning of the event, and they helped to host it and interview all of the people that appeared on the live stream event, which was great. And then we put it all up on YouTube for people to go back to and have a look at. And during the year, I've also reworked my model, and I've looked very much at now working with brand partners. So I've created relationships and used this time to nurture, and people that I contacted back in probably August last year are now starting to come to fruition. We've been in long talks with them. We've had contracts written. They've understood the software, and they're wanting to be part of our version 3 launch that's now going to be happening in the summer. So we've tried to use this time productively, just more behind the scenes stuff, I suppose, rather than moving out into the marketing of a product which people couldn't physically use at this time. They could just gain awareness and information about it. I would love to be able to take on some Kickstarter people like Sid has mentioned, and I have tried through numerous avenues, and because my business is not big enough, they're deeming the fact that I don't have at least 3 employees that I don't qualify to take a Kickstarter. And I find that so frustrating, because I have the ability to manage a small workforce and could really put some energies and time into nurturing some Kickstarters. But as I said, I've tried to be part of a couple of schemes, and we haven't been able to qualify, so that was really unfortunate. We have been able to apply for some Keep Plus funding through some links. I'm part of Malcolm's cohort at the university and the incubation group, which has been massively importantly helpful. We've met every 2 weeks and really nurtured and handheld each other through that period. So that has been a real source of stability that we've really valued. But I've been able to get some Keep Plus funding just to help with a little bit of the development costs that we've been doing. And something just for myself, as Sid mentioned, about sort of doing some volunteer work. I've gone out and become a volunteer vaccinator. I think that's just been as much for my mental health to sort of keep me grounded and sort of feel that I'm contributing in some way. But, you know, Brexit hasn't particularly affected anything to do with my business and Pocket PA, but certainly COVID has really, I would say, probably set us back from the marketing and revenue stream for at least 12 months. And so we've really had to be in some sort of survival mode rather than growth and thriving, which has been frustrating because it's been a long, protracted journey anyway with a tech startup. But I think it's made me even more resilient. I'm even more determined that I'm going to get my product over the line. And it's helped me sort of plan as well for potential investment and really fine tune and focus my attentions on what I'm doing and the direction I'm going, and to make sure that I'm properly niched and can go into a vertical that will really benefit the most and make us a good fit with seeking them out. So yeah, there's been a lot of regrouping and reevaluation, as Malcolm said as well. So that's been my story for the last 12 months.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really fascinating and inspiring to hear how you have faced these challenges, and in many cases you have turned them into opportunities. And I think there are definitely some commonalities in there, as review and adapt, as Malcolm put it, and then space adaptations, the emphasis on collaboration and on reaching out to wider networks, and I think probably the most interesting thing is a sort of the time for self-reflection and a time to kind of to think about the why of your businesses, their purpose, and an opportunity to, in some cases, rethink the business model. So really fascinating stuff, and we are going to go back to some of these, I'm sure, later on. I'd like to now ask Sean, Paul, and Briege, as representatives of key business support organizations in the county, to tell us what support is available to help SMEs navigate through some of the challenges that have just been mentioned. And actually all 3 entrepreneurs were very well versed on some of these forms of support, but perhaps you can give us your take on what's available. Could I start with Sean?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody, and really great to be here today. I don't know how many of you know Hertfordshire Growth Hub. I hope you do, but we are the county's business support service put in place and funded by Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. But we deliver it as a consortium, so very well connected into the Hertfordshire University and the Hertfordshire Chamber of Commerce. So we work really closely together, the three of us, as organisations to try and make sure that there is seamless access to myriad of support that's available in Hertfordshire and nationally and regionally as well, because there is a huge amount of support. So talking about some of the challenges that we've seen that these SMEs have seen through this period, there's been a whole heap of support programs that have been put into place in order to try and react and support businesses through this period. For example, the Volunteer Business Support Scheme, which is currently being run, it's a Hertfordshire Growth Hub service, but it's being run by the University of Hertfordshire, and it enables SMEs in Hertfordshire to get access to a mentor who has been there, done it and experienced it. So somebody that can give them that one-to-one advice, knows the challenges that you as businesses are going through at the moment, and really support you to overcome those challenges and look at the different options that are available to continue your business and move it forward and to help you survive through this period. There's, as I say, there's a whole heap of support schemes available, and part of the role of the Growth Hub is to try and bring all of those together. So I'll run through a few of those, and feel free, Briege, Poulter, sort of jump in here. But the overarching sort of message here is that there is a huge amount of support available. You're not going to remember everything that I run through now, but reach out to us. We're here to support you as SMEs, whether you come in via the Hertfordshire Growth Hub, whether you come in via the university, whether you come in via the chamber. We are connected across the ecosystem of support in Hertfordshire, and we do try and make it as easy as possible for you all. And so we'll do the grunt work. We'll find out what are the right things that will help you and meet your immediate needs as you approach us. So just to talk about some of the schemes that are available, we have got a funded programme through the Growth Hub called Get Growing 2, which is very much designed to support businesses. Particularly now, it was originally designed very much around growth and scale up, but with the pandemic, we've pivoted that project. It's very much about recovery and growth beyond the pandemic now. And through that programme, you can access up to 12 hours of consultancy support from our advisors. Our Growth Hub advisors are all experienced business people. They have been there and done it themselves. These are not civil servants, they're not public sector, they are business people that have been there and done it. So they have got that experience. As part of that, there's access through that scheme to the business expansion grant being delivered through the Hertfordshire Litt.D at the moment, which is very much about providing capital funding to allow businesses to grow beyond, and if they're diversifying, adapting their services, it's around production capability, and I'm sure Paul will add a little bit more detail around that. We've got export services to help you in terms of exporting through the Department for International Trade. We're very well connected, and there's a whole multitude of support around trying to simplify the impact of Brexit and documentation and duty, as well as through Herts Chamber and some of the work that they do around document letters of credit and things like that. We've recently run an EU transition programme, so we have got dedicated advisors that can support access around and questions around Brexit as well. We work closely with the Chamber very recently to deliver a peer networks programme, which was very much about bringing like-minded businesses together in a group to learn from each other, access facilitated mentoring, one-to-one advice, and that will be coming back again later this year. So we're expecting to see recruitment for that again. And again, through the university, you've got knowledge exchange services, access to leadership and management, and I think a real focus over the next few months is around those leadership skills within a business. People are having to adapt and change their activities, and so it's about getting the right support and getting the right skills in place to enable that. I could go on. There's so much out there. You can talk to us about Kickstart. We've got a whole range of information around Kickstart and can support you through intermediaries or support you through the application process directly with DWP. So I will stop talking because I could go on forever. But I think overridingly the message is the support is out there to help you. We want to help you. We want to help you navigate these challenges. We want to help you connect and do what's right for the business. So do reach out to us.
Thanks very much. And really a wide range of support. It'd be great to hear your views, Briege, from the Chamber's perspective. And I know that you're all three work really closely together, but yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Great to be here today, and thank you all very much for inviting me. As Sian said, we work very collaboratively, and that is the key to the strength of the support that is out there. If one of us isn't doing that support, another one is. So we work very closely with the university, with the Growth Hub, and with the Litt.D, and with the County Council. And the Chamber of Commerce has been around for nearly 100 years. The other thing that we are connected to is the British Chamber of Commerce. And we mustn't forget that that is quite an important part, that we are accredited to them. So we have a place at the table in government through the British Chamber. And they actually have provided hubs and advice that we have used to get that messages across to Hertfordshire as well, particularly with the EU transition. You know, we were preparing for that when I had my business back in 2010 to 2017. It was logistics, we were preparing for that, but it all came a bit quick, even though we had that time to prepare. So some of the support that we can offer alongside the Growth Hub and the university is connecting you to the advice and the support that you need to give you the tools. So we have the International Trade Department working alongside with the Growth Hub. We have the documents, we can do customs declarations, and we can do the export documents as well, including just advice around it. How do you get a market out in, say, Singapore or Japan? We have a digital platform that connects you globally. So you can put your offering on that digital platform and it's translated into that country's language of what you're trying to do and how you can connect. Apart from the documents, we connect businesses in Hertfordshire together because there is a lot of business to be done just locally. So we're very much about connecting business so that they collaborate and buy from each other and try and keep our supply chain as close as we can. Hence the Let's Keep the Heart in Hertfordshire, which is also a digital platform. And that has been sponsored by the Hertfordshire Growth Board. And that's the County Council. So we're really encouraging people to buy from each other and try and keep our supply chain and our skills in the county. Let's nurture all the good things that we've got and ensure that we keep it as close as we can. As Sian said, we have a peer network program that we did, finished in March, but it will be coming back again. Businesses really benefited from that peer network because they connected with each other, they supported each other, and they also had free 3.5 hours one-to-one business advice and support, which helped them either remodel their business or look at it in a different way so that they could be agile and flexible. And we've all had to do some of that. Whatever business you are, we've all had to revisit and think, are we doing this correctly? So this a great opportunity for you to connect. We do lots of events. We do some with the Litt.D. We've got a big apprenticeship scheme coming up in the next few months with the Litt.D. We work with the Growth Hub and we do joint events to try and capture everybody under one platform. We have sector summit events, conferences, and also we have a magazine called Inspire, which we publish every 2 months, an opportunity for you to be involved in that magazine or read about how other businesses are doing in the county. I'll go back to Caroline because Caroline is in our Entrepreneur Foundation, which we launched last year. That is advice and support from the experts, where we run seminars on maybe it's on the finance, how to set a business up, your P&L. And then you also get mentoring of one-to-one with our founders who are all experienced business owners and very philanthropic to take you through that journey. So it's a 2-year programme. So I think this, as Sian said, there's so much to cover. It might be easier just to contact us directly and then we can take you through it in more detail and understand what your needs are rather than throw everything at you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think a really great point, Briege, about the fact that there is support available locally, but that it's also really important to think about connections within the county and beyond the county. and great that you can offer some support in that space. Paul.
Sorry, just to say, I've been on the Chamber course, and it's we've had nearly a year of the support, and it's been outstanding, exceptional. It's been a really lovely journey, and the speakers and the quality of the people that they've had has been really, really helpful to my small business, and I know many others that are on the calls each week. It's been super well organised. Sorry, just to mention.
No, that's great. Great endorsement and encouragement for other entrepreneurs to reach out. Paul, would you like to give us your view from the LEP's perspective?
Thanks, Janina. I mean, to a certain extent, I feel like a spider at the centre of a web here, because in a sense, as local enterprise partnership, we're not often involved in direct delivery to businesses. We tend to channel funding from central government, growth hub funding, peer-to-peer networks and so forth, making sure that we're putting in place local provision to address some of the issues that businesses face. So in a sense, you know, we have strong relationships with both the Growth Hub and with the Chamber. And I think it's worth recognising that although we deliver programmes ourselves, the Business Expansion Grant Scheme, which is the largest grant programme for SMEs running in Hertfordshire at present. So that funds capital investment up to 50% of project costs, up to a maximum of £100,000 grant. And also some smaller initiatives such as our Herts crowdfunder program, which is run by another delivery partner for us called Visit Herts, and that's available for the retail and hospitality sectors, which have been significantly hit by COVID and the pandemic. I think since we launched the BEG scheme last year, we've seen an incredible demand for the service. But Briege will know this, as she's one of our panel members, which selects programs. And in essence, although it's European Development Fund money, I think it's something we would want to continue beyond the life of the current ERDF program, which ends in 2023. And probably well ahead of where we thought we would be, in terms of the number of grants that have been offered, in terms of the value of grants that have been offered, and the number of jobs that have been created. So it's been, you know, particularly successful in that space. I think the other thing that we run as well through a special purpose vehicle called Herts Loan Management Limited is an SME Growth Loan fund. Now that's very much targeted at a very high growth gazelles, if you like, in terms of businesses. It's not for every SME, but it addresses some of the gaps that SMEs face in attracting debt funds from mainstream providers. Take-up has been relatively modest over the last year, and in part that's, I think, because of the introduction of the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. And I know Paul Sullivan from the British Business Bank is on the call too. And if anyone wanted to know more about, you know, CBILS and some of the British Business Bank interventions, then I'm sure Paul would happily reveal himself and be able to talk about those. And I raise that point because I'm aware that where we sit, that not every solution that can be delivered for Hertfordshire businesses can be delivered within Hertfordshire. And I think we have to pay tribute to, you know, the success of the furlough scheme and the CBILS schemes, which have been incredibly successful in keeping the economy going. From where I sit, we would be in a far worse position than we are at present. If it were not for the furlough program and for the CBILS schemes. And I think that gives us hope for the future, because what we're seeing is a slowdown in the number of, if you like, the volume of redundancies that are taking place across the county. And so I think we're well placed for the upturn. And I think as a sort of, as someone who's developing policy in this area, that's what we will be looking for the next stages of development. The replacement for the ERDF scheme, the Shared Prosperity Fund, when we get to find out what that actually looks like from central government, then I think we're ready to develop a new suite of business support programs that are going to drive Hertfordshire and Hertfordshire businesses forward.
Thank you so much, Paul. It really is, and Sian and Briege, it's really reassuring to hear about all of the support that is available locally. And I think, Paul, you are leading me nicely to move on to Bim. I'd like to come to you now, and it would be fantastic to hear your views on the support that has been put in place at a regional level, but also at the national level for SMEs. And Paul began talking about some of those schemes already. But if possible, also, what are the plans for support during the next 12 months and beyond?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. What do I want to say that you don't already know? There's no point me repeating things you already know that I think will be interesting for people to hear about. Two things, really. The first is something called the Help to Grow scheme. It came out in the budget. I spoken to the Chancellor several times about it and his team. I've written articles about it. It is one of those things that doesn't get talked about by newspapers because they're more interested in, silly things, but could make a really concrete difference to SMEs, because what it involves, for those who don't know about it, some hopefully do, is to address the productivity problem we have in two main ways. The first way is around technological adoption, or rather the adoption of new technologies. So it's offering grants and free access to high quality technologies in whatever sector you're in. The second thing is management training. The people that get MBAs are people, like the Chancellor, or people who go off and work for big corporate banks or major corporations heading for the top. And they're the ones who get MBAs. But actually, your typical small business owner is no less in need of management training than anyone else. And yet that provision isn't available to them, because if they want to, if you run a small business, like my wife runs a small family business, employs 5 people, she couldn't go and do an MBA even if she wanted to, because where would you have the time? You're running a business. So what the Help to Grow scheme does is it's working in different local areas, partnerships with local business schools all across the country, so that people will be able to get high quality management training, just like an MBA you get from any university in the world, in a bite-sized way over time, focusing on the key things that they can improve their ability to manage their business. So that, I think, is really, really important, the Help to Grow scheme. The second thing, no less important, perhaps a bit more prosaic, is the COVID bounce back loans. Now, the bounce back loans obviously have already been rolled out, but in essence, what the Chancellor's done is he's moved back the repayment period from 6 years for these bounce back loans to 10 years. And that is significant, because depending on how much you've borrowed, that can almost halve the amount you'd have to pay back from September this year every month. And that really makes a huge difference to thousands of small businesses across the county. So they're the two things I'd like to say in particular. I suppose the other thing locally is people who have businesses that are reliant upon the town centre, reliant on people physically going into the town centre. Don't despair. What I'm hearing from my colleagues across the county, I was speaking to Oliver Dowden about this recently, in his constituency, sort of Hertsmere, which is further south than me, I'm Hitchin and Harpenden, is a real willingness of people and communities to invest in their local town centres, invest in their local high streets. And to be honest, that wasn't there as much before COVID for a bunch of different reasons that we all fully appreciate. Now, I'm not saying nobody's going to shop on Amazon. What I'm saying is that there is that sense amongst people that they want to see their high streets and town centres thriving. And footfall numbers, I know in my constituency, so in Hitchin and in Harpenden, I can't speak for others, but I know that footfall numbers are considerably up on 2019. And they were last summer, and they're going to get to that position again, hopefully this summer. The trend is good. And so my view is, the future is bright if you're in that sort of retail sector. The future's bright if you're in the almost unseen services or manufacturing sector. I won't bang on about skills because everybody always does, but there are, the government, it's a key priority of the government. So hopefully things will continue to improve. So that's really what's been going on in that sense.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a comprehensive overview regarding the range of support that has been put in place.
Comprehensive normally means you've talked too much, but you were very polite. Thank you.
No. It was. I think you highlighted some really key elements. I think that the thinking behind some of the schemes, so the emphasis on improving productivity levels in the UK through targeted programs that are looking at both the skill side of things with management, but also the introduction of key technologies.
So just on that point, the reason why it matters is all based on really sound economic theory, right? This isn't just, a bunch of people thinking it's a good idea. Andy Haldane, who has just left being chief economist of the Bank of England to become chief executive of the Royal Society of Arts, who is an exceptional thinker on these matters. He has been talking for a very long time in a series of speeches about how the productivity problem for the UK is not every company is less productive than our counterparts in other countries. The productivity problem for the UK is that we have a top seam of companies that are probably more productive than most companies anywhere, a middle that is about the same as lots of other places, but the bottom tail is considerably less productive than most other countries. And when he analysed why that was, he said that the analysis said that it was due to management training skills, so management skills, and adoption of technology. So when there's a new technology, how quickly that gets incorporated into your businesses. I mean, there were businesses until very recently, frankly, there probably still are, who do not even have basic accounting software. And they do ledgers, written ledgers, like you were doing 100 years ago. There are businesses in the UK doing that. That's an extreme example, but this stuff really, really matters, actually, and can make a big difference to your bottom line as well. Absolutely.
And I think the other driver to some of these new policies is the around the net zero agenda, which I think is also extremely important in terms of looking at the longer term horizon in terms of where we want to go towards as a sort of ecosystem of businesses within the UK. Some really, really important points, and I'm sure we'll have some questions on that from the audience. I'd like to ask Simon now, as a representative from the private corporate sector in our panel. If you could tell us the work that Santander has been doing to support universities and local SMEs, particularly since the Brexit transition and the pandemic, and how can SMEs listening today benefit from some of the support that you offer?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great question, and it's probably best to frame it in two different categories. So Santander Universities, for those on the call who aren't familiar, we're a philanthropic arm of Santander that's been operating since the early 2000s. We're present in 20 plus different countries. Globally, we support around 1,000 universities. Our total donation since inception to higher education is around, depending on exchange rates, around 1.8 trillion euros. In the UK, we've been operating since 2007. We have 85 partner universities. We've been working with Hertfordshire for 10 years, actually 2021 is our 10-year anniversary. The support that Santander offers to the HE sector is effectively split into three categories. So we support students and graduates by way of education, employability, and entrepreneurship. What does that look like? So when we look at entrepreneurship, it's primarily around supporting aspiring entrepreneurs that are in or have just come out of university by way of connections, mentoring, startup grants. The educational support has pivoted slightly as a result of COVID, which I'll talk about in a second. But since we've been working with Hertfordshire, we've donated just shy of £800,000, supporting around 1,000 individuals across those three main categories. What have we done since COVID came in? And COVID caused a real paradigm shift in our thinking. Historically, our support has been around keeping students from a widening participation background in university by way of scholarships and bursaries, promoting student and graduate employability by way of part-funded internships. So I would hope a number of the businesses on the call will be familiar with our historic internship scheme, where we would pay half the salary of a Hertfordshire student or graduate to work within that business for a period of historically between 2 and 10 weeks. When COVID came about, there was a much more immediate need for support. So we, working with universities, pivoted where our funding would go to make sure it went to the people in the most need at that time. And across our 85 partner universities, we provided in the region of £4.5 million to hardship funding for students right across the UK, from Plymouth to Abertay to Hertfordshire and Bangor. That money allowed people to live while they couldn't work. And as many of you know, students take part-time jobs, they take internships, that very quickly dried up. So during the height of the pandemic, our support was very much just in keeping students in the university. As the pandemic has evolved, and with the vaccine rollout and restrictions being lifted, our approach has now become far more holistic, which is, to use Bim's word, is probably a comprehensive answer, and not a comprehensive answer. So our support now, we've been very agile in how we deploy our funding, and like every other organisation, COVID has had a huge impact on Santander. Because Santander Universities is a philanthropic arm, our budgets have been protected more than most. But we've done an awful lot of work, Santander Group as a whole, in not just providing the bounce back loans, which are underwritten by the government, which have an incredibly competitive 2.5% interest rate. I think we've issued in the region of £4 billion in bounce back loans. We've also looked at ways that we can use our networks and our connections to support SMEs with non-financial methods. And we do that in a number of different ways. So through Santander Business, we have something called Survive and Revive, which is around supporting businesses into making it through the pandemic, and also then how they develop and evolve beyond that. So we recently just closed a program for support of freelancers. So there was £250,000 to support 250 freelancing students and graduates to do a project for a local SME. So the SME gets a piece of work done at no cost, and the student or graduate gets a piece of work and gets paid. We've done an awful lot of work behind the scenes in connecting into our local business networks and providing support around business mentoring. So we've paired over 200 mentor-mentee relationships in 2020, and that's growing and evolving in 2021. We've currently got a women's business leaders mentoring program, which is open now. We've done a myriad of webinars that are free for anyone to sign up to, and that talks about things like supply chain resilience, managing margins during volatile time, innovating for growth. We've, through our branch network and our business banking managers who have been superb during the pandemic, we offer advice and guidance on cash flow, repayment holidays. We have local networks of support through what we call our breakthrough program. And something that's coming in now, or if not now, very shortly, is something called Santander Marketplace, which is part of that Survive and Revive program, where we effectively give free advertising for local businesses through our digital panels within our branches. And that's not even talking about the new funding we've given to Hertfordshire to support local SMEs through a fully funded £1,000 project-based internship. So we've been doing an awful lot. There's more to do, but I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved.
Thank you so much, Simon. It really is impressive to hear what you're doing, both as a business and the philanthropic, through the philanthropic arm of Santander, to support universities and SMEs and students transitioning into a working life as well. I think that is really an incredible program and very, very impactful. So thank you for sharing that. We've had a huge number of questions coming through. I already had some, and I know some more are coming through now in the chat. So I think we are ready to move into our Q&A session with where the audience gets to ask our panel some questions. Please keep submitting them through the chat box, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. The first question I have here is for either Paul or Malcolm, and Malcolm actually covered some of these in his intervention initially. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected businesses from a supply chain perspective? I think, Malcolm, you gave a really good example. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, and then maybe Paul can continue.
I will add to it. I'll add to it in a slightly different dynamic, I think, because poor old COVID's getting blamed for quite a lot of things. But I would ask, in terms of supply chain, yes, of course, COVID has affected it. There's been peaks and troughs, but has it accelerated the challenges that were already in supply chains? Has it just identified peaks and troughs, shortages of people? Is the full visibility? Is the resilience, as Simon just pointed out? And as Bim pointed out, the adoption of technology, I think it's accelerated the investment programs into a visible, digitized process, where people would maybe put off that investment. COVID-19 has focused the challenge, and the technology exists, and it pulls together planning, procurement, manufacturing and logistics, and it's become more relevant now because it's created so many extremities of highs and lows. So that spectrum needs to be visible, and it needs to be resilient. There are lots of IoTs and systems and sensors that allow the traceability through the whole process. It just needed to be brought together to improve customer service and consumer availability. If we take Lural as the first example, must have been a nightmare for the huge manufacturers of this paper product to have paper available, to have manufacturing capacity available, to have logistics available, and to see it all through the supply chain. So I think COVID has actually focused on a required solution to supply chain challenges.
Thank you, Malcolm. Paul, it'd be great to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, to be honest, it's difficult to see that there isn't a sector of the economy that hasn't been affected by both Brexit and COVID in one way or another. I think, to a certain degree, I very much agree with the comments around tech adoption. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to be looking at in terms of future business support. Because I don't think many people, the old days we would have got used to jumping in a car and going for a coffee with someone. We don't need to do that anymore. And I think it's changing the way businesses are thinking. I think if you look at Malcolm's experience, the interesting thing for me is encapsulate what businesses are about. I think businesses are essentially problem solvers. And actually what we're seeing through COVID and through Brexit is a kind of willingness to use tech to solve some of those problems in a way that we might have been reticent about jumping on Zoom calls or MST calls in the past. I think we're much more prepared to do that now. And I think it's changing the way people think and the way businesses operate as such. So I think what is interesting is that when you're involved in economic development, it's a bit like trying to drive a car whilst looking through a rear view mirror. You know, most of the stuff that we're steering on the basis of old information. We don't have current data in terms of what's been the impact on businesses themselves. You know, if I look at ONS and what they're saying about the number of businesses in Hertfordshire, you know, their data relates to March 2020. And it was taken at a time before the pandemic hit. So we don't know what the full impact has yet been on business, but we've got some proxy indicators in terms of which are the sectors that have been affected. Now, we know nationally retail has been significantly affected. And I think that's largely not just around the loss of footfall, but I think around the nature of shopping and the nature of town centres in any case. I think that's more of a structural change that's ongoing there. I think in Hertfordshire, what has surprised me is the largest number of large-scale redundancies have been in the professional, scientific and technical sectors, which, you know, it came as a bit of a bolt from the blue to a certain extent, because that's our biggest sector in most areas. And I think all 38 LEPs, their biggest individual sectors will be professional, scientific and technical. That will be accountants, lawyers, you know, R&D based companies. And so we've had just under 1,000 major redundancies in the professional, scientific and technical sectors. So I think this is reaching deep into the, you know, industrial base. It cuts right across the standard industrial classification. And that shouldn't be a surprise, because we've had a massive drop off in economic output. You know, we've had the biggest fall in economic output in British social economic history. So we shouldn't be surprised that the businesses in all sectors have been affected. I think there are one or two bright spots, though. You know, as I said earlier, I think we're seeing a slowdown in those redundancy rates. We saw in Q1 of this calendar year the highest levels of private equity being invested in Hertfordshire businesses in the last 5 years. And that is in a pandemic period. And I'm comparing that to the amount of equity that was invested in Q1 2020, which was pre-pandemic. Some of that is driven by investments in life sciences, and we are incredibly lucky in Hertfordshire to have a very strong, vibrant life sciences sector. But there are also opportunities occurring, particularly in the digital and tech sector, where we're seeing equity starting to get into some of those early stage high growth companies. So I think, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. We are coming out of this, and those opportunities are occurring. I think the challenge for us is to raise the profile of some of the high growth companies that we have in Hertfordshire and make sure that they can access some of those funds, which don't sit within Hertfordshire, but are capable of being invested in companies in the area. And I think it goes back to one of the questions that was raised in the chat board about how can you get local press to support and highlight Hertfordshire SMEs. I think that's a challenge for the business community in Hertfordshire. We don't have a business paper, you know, to a certain extent. We have some magazines, you know, Herts Business Insight and so forth, and they do a very good job, but we don't seem to have, you know, we have many press titles covering the whole of the county, but we don't have anything that is of the sort of power of the Business Weekly publication that Cambridgeshire and its area manages to put out. I wish we could address that.
Maybe that's a business opportunity for someone.
But I think there are things we can do through some of our partners and through the likes of the Chamber and through their Aspire magazine, where we can bang the drum, you know, by making sure that we're increasing the distribution of those sort of titles, if you like, to to local SMEs and make sure that their pieces are included in the local press and get coverage.
Absolutely. It'd be great to hear actually, Briege and Sean, your views on that same question. What can we do to get businesses on the local press? Perhaps the lack of sort of specialist press or.
Okay, so the Hertfordshire Chamber, we're connected to every media in Hertfordshire and wider. So our members send us a press release and we put a press release out for them. We put it on our website. We might share it with Sian's team and it goes on their website. Any good news. Obviously, we've got the Inspire magazine. So there is something, but there isn't a paper that you go out and you buy or is distributed free throughout the whole of the county, like, you know, the Mercury. However, we do share press releases with all the media contacts, and that's right across the whole county. And then we obviously have our own magazine, and we also put it on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So in some ways it is happening, but it's actually embracing the digital space. And obviously our digital platform is a great way to actually showcase what you're trying to get or what you're doing to all the other members. So I would say give us a call and we'll help you with getting your story out there.
Yeah, great, Briege, and a great point. That the emphasis on social media, and I think Sean and then perhaps we can get Sid's views on that as well later.
Yeah, just briefly, I agree with what Briege and Paul have both said. It is a challenge. We have a challenge as the Growth Hub to try and get press releases out and to get the local press to pick it up. But I think it is looking at those alternative channels to market effectively. And you know, as well as the Chamber, the Growth Hub is effectively a channel to market. We have a marketplace on our website, which in the last 6 months has seen 81,000 unique users through it. So it gives you an idea of the kind of reach through that website. So and speak to us, give us a call, have a chat with one of our advisors. Let's have a conversation around what we can do to help you get the word out there a little bit more. I don't think there is a simple solution. I'm afraid I haven't got a magic contact I can pass on, but I think there are things that we can do that could help achieve the same impact, perhaps in a different way.
Yeah, and we have our digital marketing expert in the panel. So I think, Sid, it would be great if you want to maybe provide a couple of tips or observations on these space.
Yeah, that wasn't the question I had prepared, unfortunately. But look, I think getting a good story and making a good story is half the battle, and it's figuring out what the unique thing, the interesting thing is. One of the things I thought would be worth sharing, and I know there was a question around how do you position your digital agency to help their customers, and there's two things on that. I think as Paul and Malcolm alluded to, the use of technology to help businesses transform and you know, this digital transformation thing has been talked about a lot. There's a lot of businesses are doing that now, and that urgent or important but not urgent project has suddenly become being undertaken, because I think they're seeing how digital and technology can help their businesses. So yeah, let's look at how we can do that. One other thing I thought I'd love to mention is the concept of the B Corps. I don't know if you've heard of that yet, but benefit corporations are a growing movement, and it's really growing at some pace now. And the whole idea around a B Corp is that as well as profit, which is important, equally important are people and the planet, which is incredibly poignant at the moment. And I think that can be a great story as businesses are moving and saying, look, we need to take responsibility for the people that work with us and our communities, and as well as the planet. It can also be a great story. And I think if we are also positioning ourselves as more and more businesses are looking to be B Corp accredited, and it's not an easy process. I'll be clear. We're just on that process as we speak, but I have a number of friends and businesses who've gone through that process. But as that happens, more and more businesses will be looking for B Corp certified suppliers to be able to work with them. So I'd encourage everyone to look into that, get started on it. I think there may be government legislation further down the line, because it makes sense to encourage companies to adopt these practices. Makes sense for the communities, and it's good business sense as well. So it's a good way of creating a good story and a good news story that is worth sharing.
Thank you, Sid. I think that's a great advice, and a really important point as well about considering social and environmental sustainability in a company's overall premise, and the story. Which ones are the stories that you'd like to tell? I would like to move on. We have so many questions and I'm getting them from different directions. So apologies if I don't run in the order in which they're coming in the chat, because I got some other questions as well. But there is, I think, an interesting one for Bim in the chat here regarding apprenticeships. Let me just try and find it. So the question says, a lot of companies are paying the apprenticeship level aren't doing enough apprenticeships themselves. So a lot of their pots are sitting with the SFA as of now. And can the government change the rules to allow companies to use their unused apprenticeship pots to pay for short courses to meet immediate business needs? And that's get started on the productivity gap, on sort of shortening the productivity gap.
Can the government change the rules? Well, the government can. The question is, will it? The answer, I think, is no, but that's not all bad news. And let me explain why. People think of apprenticeships as being something when you take some sort of spotty 17-year-old or something and you teach them how to hold a pen or teach them how to, like, you know, go to the loo on time and all this rest of it. Actually, apprenticeships are something that can be used for people much older than that at different levels. And you can go all the way up to level 6 apprenticeships. So what I know some companies, I'm involved in the apprenticeships business, what I know that some companies do is they're taking some of their maybe lower skilled staff, putting them on an apprenticeship. So you've got an existing member of staff, put them on, for example, a level 4 or level 5 or even level 6 apprenticeship. You can do that using your apprenticeship levy. So you don't have to recruit someone new. You don't have to recruit a 17-year-old. You can take an existing member of staff, often in their 20s, for example, or even their 30s, and say, I'm going to improve your skills. And you can use the apprenticeship levy in order to do that. So I think that that's something that I don't think most businesses are aware you can do. Frankly, until I became involved with the apprenticeship business, I didn't realize you could do. So I would urge people to do that. And if they're ever concerned or they don't quite know how to do it, there are people you can ask, speak to your local MP, get in touch with me. You know, there are ways of doing it. It can be a bit fiddly, it can be a bit complicated, and we should always make these things simpler and more communicable to people. But I think that that is a good way of using your apprenticeship levy to improve the skills of your staff, rather than thinking, oh, I know what, I'm going to go and get a short course from, you know, a 3-week course or a 4-week course, which, by the way, I'm not saying is useless, but I think it's more useful to have a longer term, properly audited, properly worked through course to bring somebody up to a level 4, level 5, level 6 apprenticeship level.
Yeah, interesting point. And I think local universities are also good places to come to find out more about apprenticeships and how to get them sorted for your business or yourself.
Yes, exactly. Go to the University of Hertfordshire. I couldn't think of anywhere better to advise you on apprenticeships.
So thank you. I'm going to go to a question for Sian and Briege that I had here. What do you think the biggest challenges would be for businesses looking to bounce back after the pandemic?
I'll let you go first, Sian.
I think there's all sorts of challenges. I think SME employee wellbeing and resilience is a key focus. It's something that we we ran a number of surveys throughout the summer around COVID. We were aware of it within our own business in terms of how our own staff are feeling around the lockdown and the return to offices, and the impact that then has in terms of productivity within your work, within the business. So I think that employee welfare as well as the skills, I think the two interlink actually. I think because businesses are having to pivot and adapt adapt. They'll also have staff that are feeling a little bit lost in terms of what's their role and can they do their new role and things like that. So I think SME wellbeing and resilience, I think finance is a key with the repayment of a lot of these loans coming up, and businesses are still, we've still got a lot of businesses out there that are not yet anywhere near the level of incomes that they would have been pre-COVID, as things are beginning to reopen. So finance has been a key challenge all the way through and will remain a key challenge, and not just about raising it, but managing finance. And Ben made a point earlier around, using technology to manage finance. And you're absolutely right. The number of SMEs we still engage with that are still sort of working in cash ledgers and cash books, and so I think the finance is a real challenge moving forward, and something that support is needed with leadership and management, supply chain resilience. I think there is a whole host of stuff, but again, as we've talked about throughout this call, there's also a host of opportunities coming out of this. We've got HS2 in the county at the moment. There's this year particularly, there's a huge number of opportunities through the supply chains there. We've got a huge development in Stevenage at the moment. Again, there'll be supply chain opportunity there for SMEs, and a real focus actually from some of these big developers linked to the social value side of things, to make sure that they are including and making it possible for SMEs to enter into those supply chains. So I think there's a lot of challenges ahead, coming around, pivoting, adapting, and making sure your workforce are kept up with that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity as well.
Thank you. There is another question I want to tie in with this one, around Kickstarter. And the question came in for Sid and for you, Sean. For Sid, how long did it take to get the programs sort of working? So from a user perspective, and then maybe we can hear from Sean very briefly on what to do to get one in place.
I was very lucky to have a brilliant assistant who managed that whole process. So I just empowered Lucy to get on with it. But it took about 4 to 6 weeks. We did a considerable interview process as well, it was fairly easy to do. We did work with a delivery partner to do it. It used to be that you had to take on 30 people, and so that was as a non-starter for a lot of people. But I think working with a university, you can get some opportunities to take people on quickly. There was one other thing I thought I should probably share, which might be useful for you, Caro. As part of our DigiCluster Prime membership thing, what we're actually doing is giving our members access to our Kickstarters as well to do projects and research and other stuff. So if you find yourself in a position where you aren't able to get part of the program for the reasons you detailed, Caro, come and have a chat. We can probably get some of those young people as part of our Kickstarter scheme, program, and make them available to you, because I'm also sure, as you rightly said, they will benefit significantly from the training and experience that you would be able to give them. And in fact, I've got a meeting in 15 minutes with someone who's about to do exactly that. So there are other opportunities and other options. And I'm sure Sian will talk us through some of the stuff that the university can do to help directly.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Sorry. So just in terms of Kickstart particularly, and university opportunity, while we're not the experts, we can put you in touch with the experts at the university around graduate placements and working all of those type of things. In terms of Kickstart, Sid, you're absolutely right. There was a barrier for some SMEs initially in terms of, unless you were creating 30 Kickstart roles, you couldn't apply directly, you had to go through an intermediary. That rule has now been relaxed, and so SMEs can go directly to DWP, complete a Kickstart application and apply directly, or you can choose to go through an intermediary. It's entirely up to you what you choose to do, and there are a number of intermediaries in Hertfordshire. At the Growth Hub, we'll quite happily put you in touch with an intermediary, a relevant intermediary, depending on sector or geographic, wherever you are in the county, or we will work with you through that process ourselves, or through the volunteer business support mentors to help you go through that application process. We're versed with what DWP are looking for in terms of the type of employees that they are looking to place these Kickstart with, so we can certainly provide some advice and guidance on the way through as well. So, and Caroline, it sounds like it would be useful for us to get one of our advisors in contact with you just to look at some of these other options that might be available outside of Kickstart. there is some quite strict criteria around Kickstart, and we are finding that some SMEs are struggling smaller SMEs are struggling to get through that. But like I say, there's other options that we can discuss and look at with you.
Thank you. Briege, I know I asked you before to contribute to the first question, but there's another question which I think is quite interesting, and we are sort of running out of time, so I want to try and fit it in. And it's somebody that is interested in the panel's thoughts on, it says, my business have been virtually unable to trade since March 2020. For an SME, the danger is that then you fall off the radar in terms of your clients, and you also have no revenue or much government support. And with no marketing budget, what can you do to sort of keep the company going and not to fall off the radar of some of your clients? It says we are using Facebook and LinkedIn already, and we don't qualify for Kickstarter. So anybody that wants to jump in and provide a couple of tips on that would be great.
If I take that one, because we have a lot of SMEs in the chamber, and it is a bit about the brand when you had COVID, because we're not seeing people in real life. And some of us have put our photos on the bottom of our emails to remind people what we look like. But there's nothing better. There are still things going on, virtual networking, so that you can explain what your business does and ask, even if that connection that you're speaking to is not the right one for you, ask them, do you know anyone who'd be interested in my business? Networking is not the initial person that you speak to, it's the people that you speak to that know somebody else, and get your brand out that way. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, they're all good ways. We're coming back to digital. Every time we talk on this, we're coming back to digital. So it is about keeping your brand, and it is about looking after the customers that have been loyal and you've got, and then asking them, do they know anybody who might want your services? So you've got to just keep at it. Whether it was COVID or something else, there's always a business challenge every day, regardless of whether you're in a whether it's a financial recession or it's COVID. It is a challenge to run a business, and that's why people do it. And sometimes I used to think, why in hell am I doing this? But it is what keeps us going. So I think it is always going to be a challenge, but there's support out there, as you've heard today.
Thank you so much, Briege. I don't know if anybody else wants to say something for another minute or so, and we still have a minute or so to spare. Any other tips?
Yes, I have one. So I'll put in the chat for everyone to see a link to Santander's Survive and Revive Breakthrough Programme. That has a myriad of tools and insights on there that are free to access, and it talks about everything from how to market effectively on a tight or non-existent budget. It will talk about refinement of if you use a website, of your user experience. It talks about how to make sure you're getting around search engine optimization effectively. It's got tools and tips in there around public relations and how to identify a story and how to get it out. In reference to the previous one, there's success stories, there's guidance, there's case studies, and there's a back catalogue of hundreds and hundreds of hours of webinars that talk about everything from marketing to more sectoral and niche things like how to break into the US alcohol industry. So I'll send that in the chat function, and please do look at it. It's a fantastic resource. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I should probably also mention that the university, in partnership with the Lab and the Growth Hub, have a scheme running at the moment called the Volunteer Business Support Service, where we have a range of amazing mentors, many of them with a really strong marketing background, and it's for all qualifying Hertfordshire-based businesses. So it's very easy to sign up. You sign up through the Growth Hub, and then you are paired up with a mentor based on the challenges that you're looking to address. And you have up to 12 hours of one-to-one confidential support. So I would
definitely recommend that you look into that as well. And I think in combination with the rich resources that Simon just mentioned, and some of the tips that Briege has provided, and the support that is available through all of these organizations, I think really there is a lot to help you in your journey. And that's exactly what we wanted to do with this session. We have come now to the end of what I think has been a fantastic session. I'd like to thank all of our excellent panelists, whom I'm sure you will agree have been very open and very honest about the subjects that we have been discussing, and we really are very appreciative of your time. And hopefully you can hear the virtual applause from our audience now. I'd also like to thank all of those that have attended and for submitting your questions, some really great questions in there. I'm sorry that we couldn't answer all of them. We'll try and answer some more of them if we can via email, so do reach out. Perhaps we can put on the chat the general business development email so that they can reach out if they have any further questions. We have recorded the session and it'll be sent to anyone that has registered for the session. And I really hope that you found it useful. It has been my pleasure to host it, and thank you very much again to all of you for joining us today. And remember that we have a couple more sessions coming up later in the day.